This communication gap, bred by sectarian loyalties, has not been bridged by the advancing knowledge of science and the communications it has opened up between different parts and different peoples of the globe. Such knowledge is, on the contrary, adding edge to the self consciousness of the people and aggravating the rivalry and feuds inherited from the past. The world was engulfed in two global wars during the present century, engulfing the warring factions in an orgy of slaughter and destruction never witnessed before. Science has given knowledge, and the knowledge has been used for hatreds to work upon and invent deadlier and still deadlier weapons of raining death and destruction on enemy ranks, while the enemy power taking recourse to the same scientific knowledge made bid to forge barriers of protection and at the same time still deadlier weapons of destruction in a mad frenzy of counteraction. It is a vicious circle, man trying to destroy man through fanning the fires of competition and hatred, and neither hatred nor its more ugly manifestation of violence and wars can ever bring happiness to man. His intellect, which has been at the source of all the scientific knowledge he has so meticulously and painstakingly built up, has not helped to bestow enlightenment and vision to the unveil the path to truth happiness. Man does not live by bread alone, and man cannot live by egoistic knowledge and power, either, as the miserable predicament of the modern man shows as he leads a nightmarish existence torn between pride and anxiety, security and fear, exaltation and self abasement. The modern man is precariously perched between entrenched loyalties inherited from the past, which more intellectual knowledge was its power of reasoning, could do nothing to subdue or banish, and the peace which he so fervently craves for, and on which his hold is daily becoming more and more precarious. He is unhappy. He has truly lost his way and he is unable to recover the lost balance of life which offers true happiness to life. Religion, which puts the accent on freedom from passion and prejudice, has failed to give man the stimulus of life, which alone offers detachment and redemption from self-limiting outlook and the ravages of hatred and greed. Science, with its emphasis on the intellectual power of apprehending truth belonging to the material sphere, has been unable to reach the universal spirit of man. Despite much that man has learnt through it, though it is in the way of bringing the material environment to meet his expanding needs, such as more food, more industry, and more and improved production of food, goods, and so on, it has not helped to make man good. With all his wanted advancement of scientific knowledge, he remains the small, selfish, pettifogging, and miserable individual he has ever been, reacting to situations and challenges that life presented with the narrow eyes of self-seeking interest and not from the point of view of the interests of all and how such interests might be served. Indeed, the state of man affairs not here or there, but the world over have reached a state of crisis proportions where anything may happen anywhere, and at any time plunging the whole humanity into the danger of total physical annihilation. What with the nuclear bombs and nuclear weapons held in the leash now, the fighting powers may not long withhold from using, and it might well mean the end of civilization, of his science and religion, and of the man himself. Man finds himself individually and collectively helpless to stem against the tide of impending danger which a wild wave of collective passion may any time spark into action. The grave disorders of the times and threat they hold out for the future of man is a telling commentary on man turning to be his own enemy when he cannot govern himself and falls a prey to his thirsts and passions of the selfishness. His intellect may be of help for the conquest of the outside environment, but is absolutely valueless to govern himself. It is a spiritual process in the sense of man knowing himself to be the all knowing and all powerful spirit, which is beyond mind and matter. He is thick overlaid with the sense that he is matter or body, or that he is mind, so much so he is unable on his own to ascend to the universal light of the Spirit by transcending both matter and mind. God is the universal Spirit, and because man is deaf to his call from within, he had to come in a human form, and he has come as Meher Baba to awaken man to his inherent and native status as the universal and immortal spirit, and the tide over his problems and sufferings with self giving love and the wisdom born of such love. Meher Baba's advent has been to a world humanity unlike the advent of Christ or Muhammad, which was to a tribal people primitive and superstitious, and yet such is the livingness of the truths of their teachings that they are treasured today as precious to spiritual enlightenment as they were before. They spoke in parables and allegories which needed spiritual understanding to penetrate to their inner meaning. But Baba faced a highly intellectualized community which needed to be spoken to in the accents of intellect and reasoning. But intellect and reasoning, unless purified from the ego, cannot show the way to the kingdom of the spirit in which one really lives, but of which, clouded by ego, one remains ignorant. Love is the way, the means, and the goal of the egoless divine, and Baba's way was and is the way of pure love, pouring it out in measureless abundance to awaken the ego bound and illusory selves of humanity to their inherent status of the divine. No reasoning, no intellect can unveil this divinity. They conceal the divine by shrouding veils of the ego which animates them. The impact of Baba's spiritual or divine consciousness on humanity is not a sudden and spectacular outburst like an earthquake or a devastating flood. It is mostly silent and slow because love is silent, and the spiritual transformation it brings about is also silent and slow. gradual. One cannot know of it from outside. One has to taste it, experience it to know how basically, vitally, and radically one gets changed in every aspect of living, consciousness, and energy. Love brings into the being a release of power and consciousness, freedom from fear and inner repression and differentiation, and an awareness of others as one's own to work for and serve with the zeal of unselfishness. Some have known and experienced love for Baba. They are Baba lovers. The great majority have not consciously found it. But it does not mean that Baba's self transcending love and the infinite consciousness which goes with it have not been making an impact. People's minds are undergoing a silent change towards abiding values like love and truth from the fleeting things like riches and power and fame. People who have not known Baba are eagerly hearkening to his messages of love and truth, and there has been a rapid accession to the numbers of lovers who are consciously drawn to the love of Baba. Love and truth are eternal elements of life, and none can stand against them. However, much one gets miscarried into the ways of ignorance and selfishness. Men will turn, and men must turn to God, but Baba is, who is love and truth, and the love and the living spirit embodied in human form. I will stop here for a second and we will have some discussion. I hope you all understood. And the man is involved in this world, and we are faced with all this technology. Tata wrote this in 1970, late 70s. The technology from then to now is increased a lot. Now, a phone, iPad, computer, we are always looking at the screen. Are we giving any attention to our emotions? What emotions? Not the negative emotions like greed, anger, and selfishness, which we naturally have. How about kindness, love, compassion, empathy, all these things? What is the impact of that? Let's have some discussion on that aspect. Gautam, let's open. Jai Baba. Gautam முன்னாடி போயிடா.
Hello, hello.
ఉన్నావా?
And my microphone off this matter as
Okay.
So thing is, I'll give a heads up. So Tata's main this one was the justice. Basically, knowledge పెరుగుతుంది ఆ టైంలో. It was a dark ages అయిపోయినాయి, renaissance time అన్నమాట హిస్టరీలో. And with the rapid advent of nuclear proliferation, it has been used against man, and which has caused those two world wars during that time. And during that time, appudu తాత రాసింది about man's egotism and how it is clouding his consciousness. So with that, yeah. So other people's thoughts. Kiran, కింద నుంచి వస్తాను. Kiran.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Kiran, any thoughts? Anything you want to add upon?
No, I think in the beginning, I think Tata distinguished between science, technology, religion, from spirituality. That caught my attention first. And he makes that distinction. I think that I picked up. And then, of course, I think we started talking about love towards the back end. Yeah. So I don't have much more to add right now.
Okay.
I think Tata's language is very, very powerful, but it's also quite complex.
Long sentences. One paragraph and one sentence.
Yeah, but it's got great depth, obviously. Yeah.
Okay, good. Pawan, anything to add, or you want to make some add on to that? Make it just
Okay, thanks, Gautam. Jai Baba. In fact, it was interesting, this chapter, compared to any of the other chapters that we've read of Tata's book. I was finding it a little bit, it was quite strong words with respect to knowledge, intellect, and technology as well. I felt it was extremely strong words. He has, when you look at the previous chapters, he tends to have a fairly balanced set of words explaining a concept of matter. Maybe he wanted to kind of really highlight the contrast between what we think is really good, what we think is really the top notch, right, which is knowledge and technology, etc., and trying to eventually say that that's nothing actually compared to love and what we get from inside rather than what we get from outside, so to say. So that was my sort of key takeaway, really. There was a lot of emphasis on knowledge and technology and these kind of things. I feel that at the end of the day, my only slightly difference of view, at least from my own perspective, was that, we have all these things as tools. And again, like I think Ravi Mai was mentioning earlier, this was in the 70s. And if you look at now, 50 years ago or 40 years ago, this book was written. Imagine if Tata was here now and he saw the technology now, which is a big shift compared to 40 years ago.
Exactly.
Personally, I feel these are tools available to us to leverage and use to our benefit, as much as we can, whilst we continue to leverage our own internal spiritual consciousness. So that's my key point with respect to this reading so far. Jai Baba.
That's good. So, Tammu, you want to add in something? Tammu?
అదే బాగుంది, చాలా బాగుంది. నేను హ్యావ్ నథింగ్ మోర్.
ఓకే. చిన్నాన్న గీత, చిన్నాన్న చిన్నాన్న.
You pass it.
వినిపించట్లేదు.
చెప్పండి చిన్నాన్న. ఇప్పుడు వినిపిస్తుంది. చెప్పండి చిన్నాన్న.
నేనేమి యాడ్ చేసేది ఏం లేదు. జయ బాబా.
ఓకే.
వన్ క్వశ్చన్ ఏంటంటే, మనం ఏమి ఆన్సర్ చేయాలంటే ఇక్కడ వీఆర్ మోర్ ఫోకస్డ్ ఆన్ అవర్ స్క్రీన్ నవడేస్ కదా, apps, technology, how we can do this, we can do that, but how much are we focusing on our own self-improvement? We're always looking for our own enjoyment, and that breeds selfishness and self-centeredness. But what is important for the society is the kindness, and for our own improvement or growth, along with selfishness, we also need the other things like empathy, love. Those play a major role. They don't look like playing a role, but they play a major role in our growth. So that's what we need to, rather than the the text of Tata, how difficult or complicated it is, but I think we should try to address that. How is it useful for us now? What do we have to do now that is taking a lot of our time on this technology?
Yeah. So basically social interactions తగ్గిపోతున్నాయి, man to man interaction, and అది మీరు చెప్పారు కదా, empathy and all. అది it has been reduced to screen chatting and typing. So
And
man
not
to man
only
interaction
that, now
personal గా ఉంటే ఇంకా బెటర్ గా ఉంటుందేమో.
not only that, we with the COVID situation, we are alone at home, and screen is the only way we are interacting with the people, and we have a chance to look into ourselves, to do the introspection and how we are thinking, how our line of thinking is, what we should be, all those details.
అవును. Yeah. So Geetata, you want to add something? Geetata.
వినపడుతుందా?
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. జై బాబా.
తాత రాసిందంతా హౌ మచ్ ఇంపాక్ట్ బాబాస్ టీచింగ్స్ ఆన్ ఎవ్రీబడీస్ లైఫ్. ఏంటంటే ఎస్, మెహర్ బాబా ఉన్నప్పుడు 2 వరల్డ్ వార్స్ అయినాయి. దట్ టైమ్ హౌ టెక్నాలజీ బాంబింగ్ చేశారు కదా జపాన్ మీద. అది ఇప్పుడు కూడా ఫర్ ద ఇంప్రూవ్మెంట్కి చాలా బాగా ఉపయోగపడుతుంది. అట్ ద సేమ్ టైం ఫర్ లైక్ ఐసిస్ వాళ్ళు how they are making use of the technology అనేది. Meher Baba is also known as awakener and the silent master. Okay, Baba said, I have come not to teach but to awaken. Enough words have been given, the time has come to live them. The task for the individual is to live his religion in practice by working on himself and by serving others, not to convert or change others to match his own views. Throughout his life, Meher Baba was the living example of his motto, mastery in servitude. Meher Baba declared in 1952 that he is same ancient one who returns again and again throughout the ages to redeem man from his bondage of ignorance and to guide him to realize his true self. This statement cannot be intellectually proved, nor is it made to establish a claim. The greatness and significance of Meher Baba can only be measured by the stretching of the inner self of everybody who are attracted by the impact of his life, teachings, and several other means. This is the impact, how in our personal life, how in a positive way we can use the technology with the backdrop of our spiritual outlook. This is what I felt. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Nana, you want to add in something? Any views on this topic? Nana. వీడియో ఆఫ్, ఆడియో ఆఫ్. మీట్లో ఉన్నారేమో. హలో నాన్న. సరే, మళ్ళీ నాన్న దగ్గరికి వద్దాం. నాన్న
జస్ట్ నేను వింటున్నాను. ఇప్పుడు ఇంటలెక్ట్, ఈగో అంటే ఇంటలెక్ట్ గురించి, మైండ్ గురించే మనం డిస్కస్ చేస్తున్నాం. అంచేత ఈ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ ఆఫ్ ది మైండ్ అంటే ఎడ్యుకేషన్ ఆఫ్ ది ఎక్స్టర్నల్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్స్. మనం ఇంటర్నల్, మన హార్ట్ సబ్జెక్ట్, అది దిస్ ఎ డిఫరెంట్ థింగ్ అండ్ దిస్ ఎ డిఫరెంట్ థింగ్. సో మనం డ్యూయాలిటీ ఉంటుంది. సో ఆ డ్యూయాలిటీ తగ్గించుకోవాలన్నమాట. ఈగో ఇంటలెక్ట్, పెద్ద ఇంటలెక్ట్ అంటే బ్రెయిన్ ఉపయోగించి చేస్తాం. డిస్ట్రక్షన్, కన్స్ట్రక్షన్ ఏదున్నా కూడా. సో దాని గురించే రాశారు, చెప్పారు. కొద్దిగా డీప్ గా అండర్స్టాండ్ చేసుకోవాలి, డీప్ గా స్టడీ చేయాలి దాని గురించి.
ఓకే నైస్ నాన్న. అరే తమ్ము, యు వాంట్ టు యాడ్ సమ్ వ్యూస్? ఎనీ వ్యూస్ ఆన్ దిస్?
అమ్మని అడుగు గౌతమ్.
అమ్మ ఉన్నావా? చెప్పు. అంటే ఏదైనా యు వాంట్ యాడ్ ఇన్ సంథింగ్, ఏదైనా చెప్దాం అనుకుంటున్నావా?
లేదు ఏం లేదు, మీరు చెప్పేది వింటున్నాను అంతే.
ఓకే 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 ఓకే. తమ్ము సిద్ధు తమ్ము.
అదే ఏం లేదురా, యా వింటున్నా నేను కూడా. యా
తను తను
నథింగ్ టు యాడ్ గౌతమ్.
పవన్ చెప్పింది ఏంటంటే, పవన్ చెప్పినట్టు అప్పుడే హిరోషిమా నాగసాకి బాంబ్స్ అయినాయి. ఓకే, మ్యాన్స్ ఎక్స్ప్లోరేషన్ టువర్డ్ సైన్స్ వాజ్ మిస్డైరెక్టెడ్. సో బేసికలీ ఎప్పుడైతే బాంబ్స్ అయినాయో, హ్యుమానిటీ హాస్ వోకెన్ అప్. సడన్ గా ఎవ్రీవన్ ఫౌండ్ దట్ సచ్ సైన్స్ డీలింగ్ విత్ దిస్ అవుట్ ఆఫ్ బౌండ్ ప్రపోర్షన్స్ లో వెళ్ళిపోయినప్పుడు ఎవ్రీవన్ రియలీ గాట్ టెన్స్. ఎందుకంటే అంత హ్యుమానిటీ, అంత వాస్ట్ హ్యూజ్ పాపులేషన్స్ పోయినప్పుడు there was a loss of economy. అందుకే అప్పటి నుంచి అంటే ఇలాగా నేషన్స్ గోయింగ్ టు వార్ హ్యాస్ కమ్ డౌన్ టు ఓన్లీ ఎ ఫ్యూ టెర్రరిస్ట్ గ్రూప్స్ అనమాట. అండ్ బేసికలీ ఇట్ హెస్ కమ్ డౌన్ టు ఎవ్రీబడి. ఇంత ముందు అంటే వేల లక్షల్లో పోయేవారు, ఇప్పుడు ఏంటంటే వందలు వేలలోనే చూస్తూ ఉంటాం. అండ్ ద టెర్రరిస్ట్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్స్ హ్యావ్ కమ్ డౌన్ ఓవర్ ద స్పాన్ ఆఫ్ టైమ్. తాత రాసినప్పుడు బేసికలీ కొంచెం కోల్డ్ వార్ నడుస్తూ ఉండేది. And that's why the basis of his the whole writing, how man's science has led to such destructive process అని అప్పుడు ఆ వ్యూలో రాశారు. కానీ ఇప్పుడు వ్యూలో ఉంటే ప్రాబ్లీ సైన్స్ హెస్ హెల్ప్డ్ యాక్చువల్లీ టువర్డ్స్ బెటర్మెంట్ ఆఫ్ హ్యుమానిటీ. ఎందుకంటే ఈవెన్ దో ఇలా స్క్రీన్ షేరింగ్ ఇవన్నీ దీస్ ఆర్ థింగ్స్ విచ్ ఆర్ ఏ సైడ్ ఎఫెక్ట్ విచ్ ఇస్ హ్యాపెనింగ్. బట్ ఓవరాల్ గా ఏంటంటే ఇన్ జనరల్ మ్యాన్స్ హ్యుమానిటీ కానీ, అంటే హీస్ హ్యూమిలిటీ కానీ, ఎంపతి కానీ, ఇట్ హాస్ వాస్ట్లీ ఇంప్రూవ్డ్ కంపేర్డ్ టు ద ప్రీవియస్ జనరేషన్ అనమాట, కంపేర్డ్ టు ప్రీవియస్ తాతాస్ జనరేషన్. అండ్ ప్రాబ్లీ మన ఫ్యూచర్ జనరేషన్స్ విల్ బి మచ్ మోర్ బెటర్ జనరేషన్స్ దాన్ us.
Gautam, మన discussion at the back, 1 minute, at the backdrop of Meher Baba's philosophy, how you are connecting this present discussion?
అవునత్త, అవును. బట్ బేసికలీ తాత అలా రాశారు. తాత బాబా గారు ఉన్నప్పుడు ఇలాంటివి జరిగినాయి. ఇవన్నీ జరిగినప్పుడు their points of view were different from what we are seeing now.
No, okay.
బాబా గారు ఫాలో అవుతున్నాం, కానీ their points of view were different. అంటే ఆ టైంలో పర్స్పెక్టివ్స్ లో వాళ్ళు చూసారు అనమాట. సో బాబా గారు చెప్పిందే తాత రాశారు.
నేను చెప్తాను సాధారణంగా చెప్పాలంటే, నెక్స్ట్ దీంట్లో చెప్తాను. ఇప్పుడు యాక్చువల్ గా అప్పుడున్న టైం అవని, ఇప్పుడు అవని, లేకపోతే 100 ఏళ్ళ క్రితం అవని, లేకపోతే రేపు 50 ఏళ్ళు అయిన తర్వాత ఎంత డెవలప్ అయిపోయినా కూడా ఇంటర్నెట్ ఇస్ డిఫరెంట్. అది కొద్ది పెద్ద సబ్జెక్ట్, కొద్ది డీప్ గా ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేయాలి. నెక్స్ట్ టాపిక్ లో రేపు సాటర్డేలో నేను హౌ టు లవ్ గాడ్ అని ఉందే, దాంట్లో నేను ఐ విల్ మీకు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేసి చెప్తాను. అప్పుడు మీరు క్వశ్చన్స్ అడగచ్చు, అప్పుడు అండర్స్టాండ్ చేసుకోవచ్చు. సింపుల్ గా నా ఉద్దేశ ప్రకారం ఏదో మాట్లాడేది కాదని చెప్పేసి.
అంటే ఇక్కడ ఓవరాల్ పొలిటికల్ పర్స్పెక్టివ్ మాట్లాడుతున్నాను నేను.
జనరల్ పొలిటికల్ గా కాదు, పర్సనల్ గా కూడా. ఆల్సో చెప్పింది కరెక్టే. అంటే ఇప్పుడు కొద్దిగా మనకి మస్ట్ డిఫరెన్షియేట్, ఏది ఇంపార్టెంట్, ఏదని ఇంపార్టెంట్ అనేది కూడా చూసుకోవాలి. మనం ఎక్కువ ఇంపార్టెన్స్ మైండ్ కి సంబంధించి ఇస్తాం. అది నెక్స్ట్ దీంట్లో కొద్దిగా ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తే, అప్పుడు హౌ టు లవ్ గాడ్ అని ఉందే మీరు కొద్దిగా చదవాలి. చదివిన తర్వాత కొద్దిగా ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేసి నేను డిస్కస్ చేసిన తర్వాత అప్పుడు మీరు కూడా వెంటనే అండర్స్టాండ్ చేసుకుని క్వశ్చన్స్ అడిగితే అప్పుడు ఇచ్చేద్దాం. అబౌట్ గాడ్.
ఇంకెవరు?
Pawan wants to say something. Pawan
wants to say something.
Yeah, no, I was just wanting to talk about same thing. Ravimai just a few minutes ago he had mentioned about this technology. And before that, first of all, distinction is, at least this is the way I look at it, is so one is what Meher Baba told us, and second is this book is also Tata's interpretation of that. Okay, so he might be quoting a few things, but also it is his interpretation of different things as well. So there are elements of him quoting Baba or talking exactly what Baba conveyed, but also some parts of it could have been his own interpretation of what he understood or he experienced in his love of Baba. Okay, I just wanted to put that out there. Now, coming back to this whole technology thing, a bit of it, I sometimes I feel, that's why I was saying, compared to his other chapters that we have read so far, Tata's, I felt he was a little too harsh over here in this. That was my immediate viewpoint, but at least that was the thought that was coming in my mind. Because technology is, see, now COVID ochindi ippudu. The reality is we are all able to really interact and talk. We are having a satsang together. And one of the facilitators or enablers for that is technology. If this technology was not there, we would have not been able to do that. Right. Bombay lo, they have the Baba lovers thing, the Cyrus Kambata Garu, beautiful speeches he gives. But without this technology, I would have not had access to teachings of Baba, and then giving me a platform to potentially introspect and look internally as well. So my point is, again, I'm just reiterating, maybe at the cost of repeating myself, like everything else, like Amma constantly gives the example, knife is there, knife we can use to cut vegetables, we can use to go and stab somebody. So technology is also a similar thing. It can be leveraged for positive and negative. But I think Tata's point is clearly saying that we shouldn't overrate these external factors. Give it its status. Don't put it in a higher status than it deserves, because the real biggest status in life is our internal spiritual progress rather than external. I think that was my key takeaway. Technology itself, I would not go outright and say, oh, it's really created. For example, there was a statement saying that this technology is now being used to spread hatred and something like that. I feel it's both ways. Technology does that, but technology is also used to do a lot of positive things in our overall, which is helping us in our overall progress or evolution of our consciousness. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, that's good.
Gautam,
I agree with you.
Pawan, if you look at how much proportion we are using for our own entertainment versus for our personality improvement, technology-wise, if you take that proportion, there's a big difference, kada? That's what's the problem.
ఇప్పుడు ఇలా చిన్న ఒక 2 hours నాకు టైం ఉంది. 2 hours టైం ఉంటే ఐ కెన్ ఐదర్ స్పెండ్ వాట్సాపింగ్ టు మై ఫ్రెండ్స్ విచ్ ఇస్ ఆఫ్ నో యూస్, ఆర్ ఐ కెన్ ప్యారల్లీ ఐ కెన్ అటెండ్ ఎ వెబినార్ ఆల్సో. సో పవన్ చెప్పినట్టు ఇట్స్ అ డబుల్ ఎడ్జ్ స్వర్డ్. యూ కెన్ యూజ్ ఇట్ ఫర్ యువర్ యాజ్ పర్ యువర్ గ్రోత్ అనమాట. సో కాన్ఫరెన్స్ వుడ్ హావ్ డెఫినెట్లీ హెల్ప్ మీ. ఇంతకుముందు కొంతమందికి వెళ్ళేవాళ్ళం, ప్రతిదానికి అక్కడ పర్సనల్గా వెళ్ళలేకపోయేవాడిని. Now webinars and conferences we are attending, even any small conference we can easily attend upon. అలాగని నేను వాట్సాప్ చేసుకుంటూ ఇంకేమైనా చేసుకుంటూ కూర్చున్నాను అనుకోండి, దట్స్ ఫర్ నథింగ్, ఫిట్ ఫర్ నథింగ్ టైం కదా. సో అలా అన్నమాట. యా, పవన్ హ్యాస్ ఎ పాయింట్ దేర్. ప్రవీణ్, I forgot.